When my daughter told me she was taking everything my husband left behind, our home, our memories, and my dignity, I collapsed right there on our marble kitchen floor. Days later, I was sleeping in a cheap motel while she moved her boyfriend into my bedroom. That's when I realized family ties are like fine china, beautiful to display until someone decides to shatter them for the insurance money. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from. Because trust me, this story twists more than a DNA test at a family reunion. My name is Clara Winters. For 32 years, I believed I had built an unshakable foundation with my family. My husband Richard was a successful investment banker, and together we raised our only daughter, Laura, in our beautiful brownstone on the Upper East Side. Our life wasn't perfect. Richard worked long hours, and sometimes I felt the distance growing between us, but I never questioned our stability. Until 8 months ago, when Richard died suddenly of a heart attack. The morning it happened, I found him slumped over his desk in his home office. The paramedic said he was already gone when I called. Just like that, my husband of 3 decades, the father of my child, was reduced to a death certificate and funeral arrangements. Laura flew in from Chicago, where she'd been working at a law firm since finishing her degree. She stayed with me for 2 weeks after the funeral. I was grateful for her presence as we sorted through initial paperwork and notifications. Her legal background helped navigate the bureaucratic maze that follows death. "Mom, don't worry about anything," she assured me, taking control of documents with a confidence I lacked in my grief. "I'll make sure everything is handled properly." I was too numb to notice how she pored over his financial statements late into the night. Too consumed by my loss to question why she extended her stay 3 times, canceling client meetings and working remotely. Too blind to see how her eyes calculated while her arms hugged me. The first hint something was wrong came when Richard's longtime assistant, Margaret, called me 6 weeks after the funeral. "Clara, I'm so sorry to bother you," she said, her voice unnaturally hesitant. "But there's something you should know about Richard's estate. Has the will been read yet? Script part separator ===. Not formally," I told Margaret. "Laura has been handling things with the lawyers. She says the process takes time." There was a heavy pause on the line. "Clara," Margaret said slowly, "Richard had me witness his updated will 2 years ago. He specifically mentioned providing for you first, with Laura receiving her portion in a trust. You should have been notified by now." My hand tightened around the phone. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to ask questions. Today." After hanging up, I sat frozen in my living room. Outside, autumn leaves skittered across our garden, the garden Richard had lovingly designed for me on our 10th anniversary. I'd been walking through my grief like a sleepwalker, letting Laura handle everything because it hurt too much to face Richard's absence in legal documents. That afternoon, I went into his office, a room I'd avoided since finding him there. His presence lingered in every corner, the leather chair still holding his shape, his reading glasses folded neatly beside a half-read novel. I ran my fingers across his massive oak desk, remembering how he'd joked that a banker needed an imposing workspace to intimidate the competition. The desk drawers were locked. Strange, they never used to be. I searched for his keys, finding nothing. His key ring, which normally hung by the door, was missing. The filing cabinet where he kept important documents stood empty except for old tax returns. When Laura returned that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen. "How's the estate coming along?" I asked casually. She set down her laptop bag. "Still working through it. These things are complicated, Mom. I spoke with Margaret today." Laura's expression flickered, just momentarily, before settling into concerned daughter mode. "Why would you bother her? She's probably still grieving too." She mentioned Richard's updated will. Laura sighed, pouring herself a glass of wine from the bottle I'd opened. "Margaret's confused. Dad's will is straightforward. I've been working with his attorneys." "Which attorneys?" I pressed. "Not Peterson and Grant." Richard had used the same law firm for decades. "Dad switched firms last year," she said smoothly. "He wanted someone specializing in estates." The lie hung between us like a poisonous cloud. Richard had never mentioned changing attorneys. "I'd like to see the will," I said quietly. Laura's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, Mom. I'll bring copies tomorrow. But right now, we need to discuss something else, the house. Script part separator equals. She sat across from me, swirling her wine. The thing is, Dad left specific instructions about liquidating assets. The market's favorable right now, and I've already had interest in the brownstone. Interest? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. From whom? A development group. They're offering well above market value. I stared at her, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. This is my home. Mom, Laura said with practiced patience, it's an expensive property with high taxes and maintenance costs. The proceeds from selling would secure your future. My future is here, I said, my voice finding its strength. Richard and I built this life together. Laura's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Dad made provisions for your comfort. There's a lovely assisted living community in Connecticut. Assisted living. I stood up so quickly my chair toppled backward. I'm 62, not 92. I'm thinking practically, she countered. This place is too much for you alone. I want to see the will. Tomorrow morning. She nodded, gathering her things. Of course. And Mom. Try to keep perspective. Dad always wanted what was best for both of us. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked and settled around me, suddenly feeling foreign. I'd lived here for 27 years. Every scratch on the banister, every worn floorboard told our story. And now Laura wanted to erase it all. I crept doftai 7:03 da manhã. Drauto Richard Schoff again. In the stillness, I noticed something I'd missed earlier, a faint rectangular outline on his desk blotter, as if something had been removed. A safe deposit box key? Documents. By morning, I was exhausted but resolute. Laura arrived at 9:30, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed professional authority. Here, she said, sliding a document across the kitchen counter. The will. Scanned the pages, my heart sinking. According to this document, Richard had indeed left everything to Laura as executor, with instructions to provide for Clara's needs at Laura's discretion. This isn't right, I whispered. This isn't Richard. Laura touched my arm. Dad knew they take care of you. I looked into my daughter's eyes, Richard's eyes, and saw nothing of the girl I'd raised. When did he sign this? Last year. He wanted to ensure everything was properly managed. And who witnessed it? His new attorney and his partner. I pulled away from her touch. Richard would never do this to me. Laura's expression shifted from sympathy to something harder. Dad knew I was the practical one. You've always been emotional, Mom. Sentimental about things. Things. I repeated. You mean our home. Our life. The house needs to be listed this week, she said, checking her watch. The developers have a timeline. Script part separator equals. The house needs to be listed this week, she said, checking her watch. The developers have a timeline. I need more time, I insisted, my voice wavering despite my efforts to stay composed. The market won't wait, Mom. She gathered her papers with brisk efficiency. I've scheduled an appraiser for Thursday. As she headed for the door, I called after her. Who are these developers? She paused. Westfield Properties. They're reputable. Something clicked in my mind. Westfield Properties. Where had I heard that name? After Laura left, I paced the house, my sanctuary now feeling like a battleground. This will couldn't be real. Richard wouldn't leave me at our daughter's mercy. But if Margaret was right about an updated will, where was it? I called Margaret, my hands shaking. Clara, she answered immediately. Did you speak with Laura? Yes. She showed me a will that leaves everything to her. She's selling our home. Margaret's gasp was audible. That's not right. The will I witnessed left you the house outright, plus half his investments. Laura received a substantial trust. But where would Richard keep his official documents? I interrupted. Check the bank. He had a safe deposit box at Manhattan Trust on 67th. I grabbed my coat and was halfway out the door when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Mrs. Winters? A man's voice. My name is Daniel Harmon, from Harmon and Walsh. I was your husband's attorney. My breath caught. Yes. Could we meet today, if possible? It's about your husband's estate. I'll be there in an hour, I replied, my heart thundering. As I flagged down a taxi, another call came through. Laura. Mom, I forgot to mention, she said too casually. Some man might contact you claiming to be Dad's lawyer. He's a fraud trying to capitalize on Dad's death. Just ignore him. I watched the city blur past the taxi window, bile rising in my throat. My own daughter was lying to my face. At Manhattan Trust, I presented my ID and marriage certificate. The manager led me to the safe deposit vault. Mrs. Winters, he said kindly, your husband accessed this box 3 days before his death. Inside, I found what I was looking for, the Real will, sealed in an envelope with a handwritten note. Clara, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. Trust no one. Not even family. Script part separator, The real will confirmed everything Margaret had told me. Richard left me our home, half his investments, and a letter explaining his concerns about Laura's recent behavior. He'd noticed her growing entanglement with Westfield Properties, a development company with questionable ethics. The other half of his investments would go to Laura, but in a trust with specific conditions. I took the documents directly to Daniel Harmon's office, a distinguished space in Midtown with views of Central Park. Daniel was in his 60s, with silver hair and a grave expression that reminded me of Richard. Mrs. Winters, he said, rising to greet me. I've been trying to reach you since your husband's passing. My daughter intercepted your calls, I replied, placing Richard's will on his desk. She showed me a different will entirely. Daniel examined the document, his frown deepening. This is the authentic will I prepared with Richard last year. The version your daughter presented must be fraudulent. How is that possible? He sighed heavily. Unfortunately, very possible. Document fraud happens more often than you'd think, especially with significant estates. Your husband's is worth approximately $33 million. I felt lightheaded. 33 million. I knew Richard was successful, but he was an exceptional investor and very concerned about protecting you. Daniel puli dá-te another file. Which is why he left this contingency plan. He suspected something might happen. The file contained detailed documentation of Laura's connections to Westfield Properties, including evidence that she'd been secretly working as their legal consultant while still at her Chicago firm. The development company had been buying up historic properties throughout Manhattan, demolishing them for luxury high-rises. Our brownstone was the cornerstone of their next project. Why would she do this? Ivisperid, my heartbreaking. Money, power. Daniel sadly. Or perhaps something else entirely. Richard mentioned Laura had changed dramatically in recent years. He was investigating why. As I absorbed this betrayal, my phone rang. Laura again. Mom, where are you? We need to sign those listing papers today. I took a deep breath. I'm with Daniel Harmon. Richard Schectel attorney. The silence on the other end stretched for 3 heartbeats. I see, she finally said, her voice ice-cold. Well, that's unfortunate. You have until tomorrow to vacate the house. The locks are being changed at noon. Script part separator, The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief. She's threatening to lock me out of my own home, I told Daniel, my voice trembling. His expression hardened. She has no legal right to do that. This will is clear. The house is yours. He checked his watch. But we need to move quickly. Courts close at 5, and we need an emergency injunction. The next 3 hours were a blur of legal documents and rushed courthouse visits. By 4:45 p.m., Daniel had secured a temporary restraining order preventing Laura from changing locks or removing property from the brownstone. This buys us time, he explained as we left the courthouse. But she'll fight back. The fraudulent will suggest she has professional help. Who would help her do this? That's what we need to find out. And quickly. These development deals move fast. When the taxi dropped me at home, a sleek black car was parked outside. Through the living room window, I could see Laura pacing, phone to her ear. I squared my shoulders and entered my house, restraining order in hand. Laura's head snapped up. Behind her stood a tall man in an expensive suit. "Mom," she said flatly, "this is Stephen Carver from Westfield Properties." "Nice house," Stephen remarked, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Shame you won't be keeping it." I held up the restraining order. "Actually, I am. And you're both trespassing." Laura laughed, a harsh sound I'd never heard from her before. "You think a piece of paper stops anything? Dad's estate is mine. The real will was destroyed." "Except it wasn't," I replied, watching her confidence falter. "Richard was smarter than that. He knew something was wrong." Stephen placed his hand on Laura's shoulder. "We should go. Our attorneys will handle this." As they moved to leave, I blocked the doorway. "Why, Laura? What happened to you?" Her expression flickered, vulnerability breaking through her mask for just a moment. Then it vanished. "You wouldn't understand," she said, pushing past me. "You never have. Script part separator, After they left, I collapsed onto the sofa, shaking. The house felt violated, as if their presence had contaminated every corner of my sanctuary. I called Daniel immediately. "They're claiming the real will was destroyed," I told him, still trying to process Laura's coldness. "But we have it," he reassured me. "What concerns me is how confident they sound. They must have powerful connections." That night, I barely slept. Every creak made me wonder if Laura was returning with locksmiths or worse. By morning, my fear had hardened into resolve. This was my home, my life. No one, not even my own daughter, would take it from me. The doorbell rang at 7:30 a.m. "Fru de Pefoli, e só Margarete, clutching a letter portfolio." "I brought everything I could find," she said, hurrying inside. "Financial records, meeting notes, Richard's calendar for the past year." She lowered her voice. "Clara, there's something else. Richard was investigating Westfield Properties before he died. He found irregularities in their funding, possibly money laundering." My blood ran cold. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying he was going to report them to the SEC. The heart attack happened the day after he told me his plans." The implication hung in the air between us. "You think that Laura?" I couldn't finish the sentence. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. But Richard changed after his last meeting with Laura in Chicago. He said she wasn't herself, that she seemed frightened underneath her hostility." The doorbell rang again. Daniel looked troubled. "I don't know, but this suggests there might be aspects of Richard's business dealings even I wasn't aware of." I forwarded the text to Daniel and Margaret. "Could Richard have been involved in something illegal?" "Absolutely not," Margaret insisted. "Richard was meticulous about compliance." "But," she hesitated, "in the last year, he did mention concerns about one of his investment partners. Said the man was pushing boundaries Richard wasn't comfortable with." That night, I returned home to find a manila envelope slipped under my door. Inside were photos of Richard meeting with men I didn't recognize, along with bank statements showing transfers to numbered accounts. A note read, "Your husband wasn't who you thought. Walk away now." My hands shook as I called Daniel. "They're trying to smear Richard's reputation." "It's classic intimidation," he replied. "They want you scared and isolated. Don't touch anything else. I'm sending my investigator to collect the envelope." The next morning, a court courier delivered another shock. Laura had obtained an emergency hearing scheduled for 3 days later. The judge would decide whether to freeze Richard's assets pending a full competency evaluation. "They're accelerating," Daniel said when I called. "Someone's pulling strings to fast-track this hearing." "I can't lose my home," I whispered. "You won't," he promised. "But Clara, we need to consider that Laura might be caught in something bigger than we realized." That evening, as I sorted through Richard's personal items, I found an old photo album. Inside was a picture of Laura's college graduation, her smile bright, Richard's arm around her shoulders. My throat tightened. Where had that girl gone? My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a man I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Winters?" He called. "I worked with your daughter in Chicago. She's in trouble, real trouble. Please, I have information about why she's doing this. Script part separator, I hesitated. This could be another trap. But something in the man's urgent tone persuaded me. I'm calling the police if you try anything, I warned, opening the door but keeping the security chain in place. My name is Marcus Lehner. I was Laura's colleague at Brennan and Associates. He slipped a business card through the gap. She doesn't know I'm here. I examined the card, then reluctantly unchained the door. What trouble is Laura in? Inside, Marcus glanced nervously around. 2 months ago, Laura was working late on some routine contract reviews. She accidentally received files meant for a senior partner, documentation of Westfield's real estate transactions. She found evidence they were purchasing properties using shell companies linked to organized crime. My breath caught. And she told them instead of reporting it? Marcus shook his head. She was going to report it until they approached her. They made it clear they knew about Richard's investigation, and that accidents could happen to parents as easily as to daughters. The implication hit me like ice water. Are you saying they threatened my life to control her? They showed her photos of you shopping, at your doctor's appointments. Said they'd make your death look like natural causes, just like— He stopped abruptly. Just like Richard's, I finished, my voice barely audible. I think she made a devil's bargain, Marcus continued. Help them acquire your property, and they'd leave you alive, just displaced. Why are you telling me this? Because they're not going to stop with your brownstone. And they won't leave witnesses when they're finished. Script part separator, As Marcus left, he locked the door with trembling hands. If he was telling the truth, Laura wasn't my enemy. She was protecting me, in her own misguided way. But if Westfield had orchestrated Richard's death— I called Daniel immediately. I think Richard was murdered, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. And Laura might be working with Westfield to protect me. There was a long pause. That changes everything, he finally said. If true, we need evidence before confronting them. People capable of murder won't hesitate to eliminate threats. The court hearing was only 2 days away. Without proof of what Westfield was doing, I'd lose everything, and Laura would be deeper in their control. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I found myself in Richard's office again, running my fingers across his desk, remembering how he'd sometimes work until dawn, his dedication to providing for us. The desk lamp cast shadows across the room. I noticed something odd about the antique globe in the corner, Richard's prized possession from his grandfather. The meridian ring seemed slightly askew. Curious, I examined it closer. The globe didn't sit quite right in its wooden base. Following a hunch, I twisted the globe gently. It rotated fully and clicked. The wooden base split open, revealing a hidden compartment containing a small external hard drive and a handwritten note. Clara, the ultimate insurance policy. Open only in emergency. My heart pounding. E connected the drive to Richard's computer. Password protected. I tried our anniversary. Failed. Laura's birthday. Failed. The date we bought this house. Failed. Then I remembered our private joke. Whenever Richard locked anything, the password was always the date of our first kiss. I typed in 07091985. The drive unlocked, revealing hundreds of files, Richard's secret investigation. Everything about Westfield, their criminal connections, offshore accounts, and evidence that could save both me and our daughter. Script part separator, Morning light filtered through the curtains as he copied Richard's files onto a secure flash drive. This evidence was our lifeline, but using it meant putting targets on our backs. If these people had killed my husband, they wouldn't hesitate to silence us permanently. I called Daniel with an urgent request: arrange a meeting with Laura alone, away from Westfield's watchful eyes. It's dangerous, he warned. They're likely monitoring her. She's still my daughter, I insisted. I need to try. Daniel secured a private conference room at his law firm's satellite office, a location not connected to our case. Security cameras, limited access points, and trusted guards at each entrance. While waiting for Laura to arrive, I reviewed my strategy. Confrontation wouldn't work. I needed to break through whatever fear was controlling her. When the door opened, Laura appeared exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Gone was the confident lawyer who'd threatened to take my home. You shouldn't have contacted me, she whispered, checking the room for recording devices. I know about Westfield, I said quietly. I know why you're doing this. Haar professional mas que craque. For a moment, I glimpsed my daughter again, terrified and trapped. You don't understand, she hissed. These people, what they're capable of. They killed your father, didn't they? Laura's eyes widened with shock. How did you? Because Richard was always 2 steps ahead, I replied, revealing the flash drive. And so am I. Script part separator . Laura collapsed into a chair, her composure finally shattering. They said it would look like natural causes. Dad was getting too close to exposing their operation. And threatening me was their leverage over you, I said softly. Tears streaked her makeup. They showed me photos of you at your yoga class, at the grocery store. Said they could make your heart stop just like Dad's. She covered her face. I thought I could protect you by giving them what they wanted. By making me homeless. By getting you away from here. I was planning to set you up somewhere they couldn't find you. E pulled my chair closer. Laura, listen to me. Your father left evidence, everything needed to bring these people down. You don't understand how powerful they are, she whispered. They have judges, police. Which is why we need to be smarter. I squeezed her hand. Richard created a dead man's switch. If anything happens to me, everything goes to the FBI, SEC, and major news outlets simultaneously. Her eyes widened. They'll kill us both. Not if we move first. Tomorrow's hearing isn't just about the estate anymore. I pulled out a burner phone. Call your contact at Westfield. Tell them I've agreed to sign over the property, on one condition. E o antitomite de principals face to face. That's suicide. I smiled grimly. No. It's a trap. Laura looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But I hadn't felt this clear-headed since Richard died. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Westfield's executives sat behind their army of lawyers, smug confidence radiating from them. Stephen Carver nodded at Laura, who sat across the aisle from me. According to plan, she'd avoided me, maintaining the illusion of our rift. When the judge entered, I squeezed Daniel's arm, our signal. Immediately, federal agents positioned at the courtroom doors stepped forward, badges raised. Stephen Carver, James Wilson, and Eliza Thornton announced the lead agent. You're under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, and the murder of Richard Winters. Chaos erupted. Carver lunged toward Laura, his face contorted with rage, before agents tackled him to the marble floor. You recorded everything, he spat at her as they handcuffed him. No, I said, stepping forward. I did. The microtransmitter Daniel had given me had captured their midnight meeting at my house, where they'd threatened to handle me like they handled Richard if I didn't cooperate. Combined with Richard's evidence, it was enough to bring down their entire operation. As they led Westfield's executives away, Laura collapsed into my arms, sobbing like the little girl I remembered, the one who'd come to me with skinned knees and broken hearts. He'd be so proud of you, I whispered, stroking her hair. 6 months later, as Laura and I sorted through Richard's remaining papers, she found a letter he'd written her years before, as if somehow knowing this day might come. Remember, sweetheart, real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's in the courage to stand for what's right, even when standing alone. We weren't alone anymore. We had each other. And that was worth more than $33 million could ever buy.